So basically I got into cars. My dad was always kind of into cars. I remember going with him to the Bill Jacobs Chevrolet dealership, buying his 73 Nova, which actually was my first car. And I remember the old days where they used to have the checklist, which motor you wanted, what kind of interior you wanted. And ever since then, I was fascinated by cars. Growing up, I was always into cars. I had older friends that were in the neighborhood, always had hot cars. Always wanted to get into this club called the Time Machines, but I couldn't get in because I didn't have a car. So it took a while before I got a car. I had a rusty 73 Nova, that was my car. Couldn't get in the club with that one. They let me hang around a lot. I would go to their shows that they would put on. Most of the guys were from Romeoville and Bolingbrook, but I always wanted to get into that club because those guys were great. They had beautiful cars. They knew everything about it. They helped me out with my car whenever I had a problem with it. They'd help me out. They were guys that I looked up to when I grew up. Finally, I got into it when I finally got my first car, was the 90 RS Camaro. Finally got into the club, which was like a great day. It was awesome to finally be able to put on that shirt that said Time Machines and be part of that club. Throughout the days, I ended up buying the 70.5 Z28, which made a lot of the guys crazy because it was a great car, and they were telling me all the things I should do to it. Back in the days, chrome, and the more chrome you put on the car and the bigger wheels and tires. The only problem I had with is this car was so original that I didn't want to mess with it, so I just left it alone. After a while, it became acceptable. The more original the car was, the better the car was. Spent a lot of time with those guys, looking up to them, doing the shows with them and stuff. At one time, we probably had 30, 45 members that would go down to Plainfield Cruise Night. They shut down one of the lots for us. We park all their cars there, put up our banner, and represent. And that was just a great time. Unfortunately, throughout the years, some of the older guys that were 10, 15 years older than me have passed away, and some of the other younger guys have moved away. So now we're left with about maybe 5 or 6 of us left. We still try to get together, but it's not as easy now as it was back then. Well, I'm a retired police officer. I spent 25 years in the law enforcement. I did 2 years with the Lockport Police Department, and then I moved over to Plainfield Police Department. When I worked there, just shortly after I started there, I had a little bit of a hand with the start of the Plainfield Cruise Nights. We had brought it to, me and one of the other sergeants had brought the ideal to Business Commission and said, hey, this is bringing in a lot of people. Downers Grove was the example. And it's bringing a lot of people into the downtown area, bringing a lot of money and revenue in, and bringing just people down into the downtown area. So they went out and they looked at it, they reviewed some of it, decided, all right, we're gonna try it. So the first couple of years of the cruise nights, I didn't have the night off where I could go cruising with my car. Unfortunately, I was on patrol a lot, seeing a lot of cars. I worked K-9 for about 8 years, so a lot of times I would point the cars out to my K-9 partner, who didn't really seem to have any interest in them, but it was cool. It was nice to see the cars going. I used to remember cruising through downtown, seeing 50, 60, 70 cars on each side of the downtown area, and just thinking, this is awesome, this is a good time. And that was early when the cruise nights just first started. And like I said, Downers Grove was the first one around here that did it. And then when Plainfield did it, you had other towns doing it, Lockport and everything like that. Funny story is that one night when I was working, my black 70.5 Camaro came driving by me, and the driver decided to do a little burnout. I ended up pulling him over, asking him what he was doing. He said his foot slipped off the clutch, which is a story that we heard a lot with stick shift cars. Talking to the owner for a little bit, found out that he had just bought the car a little while ago. And I handed him my business card and said, hey, if you're ever interested in selling the car, give me a call. Not thinking that he would call me back, but he did. 2 years later, I had just purchased my first house, and all my money went into my house. Everything I saved was for furniture and everything like that, so I had $0. And this guy calls me and tells me, hey, I'm selling the car. Told him I really didn't have the funds to do it. That's the car I always wanted. And he's like, well, if you really want to look at it, come look at it, and we'll see what we can do. So I kind of blew him off a little bit, hoping that he would just sell the car outright to somebody else. About 2 more weeks later, he calls me back. Hey, I still got the car, come look at it, man. You really got to look at this car. So I'm like, all right, I'll go look at it. So I went and looked at it, drove it, loved the car. But at that time, he was starting to sell things off of the car. He ended up selling the dual snorkel air cleaner. He ended up selling the original wheels that were on the car. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I just need the money. I got to have the money right now. And I don't know what the issue was, but he needed money fast. Told him I had to think about it. Went home, told my mom about it. And my mom was actually the one that loaned me the money for the car. She's like, if you want the car, go get it. I'll loan you the money. You pay me back when you can. My mom actually had a hand in both of my cars. My mom ended up having stage 4 lung cancer, and she was in the hospital. When I would visit her, she'd doze off, and I'd look at my phone, look through, you know, different sites of cars. And I always wanted this car. When I was in high school, a girl that was in my architecture class, her and her mom bought this car when it was brand new. So I was jealous because she got the car that I wanted for high school. And she ended up smashing the car like 2 weeks after she bought it. And she drove the thing throughout the rest of the year with a smashed up front end, and the fenders was all messed up. It just ticked me off. So that was the car I always wanted. So I'm strolling through my phone looking at cars, and my mom asked me, she goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm looking at cars. What are you looking at? And I'm like, oh, you remember that car I always wanted in high school? She goes, yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm looking at those. She goes, just get it, just buy one. And I'm like, I don't have the money right now, Mom. And so after she had passed away, she had left me some money for the car. And it was strange because it was like literally like a week later, this car popped up on the Facebook Marketplace, and it was at the right price. And so I ended up purchasing this car, which was my high school car that I always wanted. So my mom had a hand in both of my cars. So every time I drive either one of them, she's with me. It's a good feeling to know that, you know, she was behind me both times buying my cars. Hi, I'm Jim. This is my 1982 Z28 Camaro Indy Pace Car Edition, and that's what makes me a car guy.